going. So first we will start with a roll call. We are expecting Vice President Price. Secretary Garcia will be in and out, balancing this meeting with his county commission meeting. Dr. Gonzalez.
Here.
Board Member Bozay.
Here.
Marvelous. Moving on to the Pledge of Allegiance and the salute to the New Mexico flag. Anybody feeling inspired?
I'll do the English.
Okay.
All right, Dr. Gonzalez, and it looked as if Dr. Garcia was volunteering as well.
Can you hear me before you have the Pledge of Allegiance? Do you hear me?
Yes. Hello,
Yes.
Vice President Price. Thanks for joining us.
Okay.
Good to hear you.
Okay.
All right, Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Gonzalez, please.
Okay, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Juro fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y la república que representa una nación bajo Dios indivisible con libertad y justicia para todos.
I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the Zia symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures.
Saludo la bandera del Estado de Nuevo México, el símbolo de amistad perfecta entre culturas unidas.
Thank you very much. And the acknowledgement of tribal land.
We acknowledge the original people of the land, the Tesuque Pueblo people and other tribal nations, and ask them to walk with us today as we share and learn together.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gonzalez. Moving on to approval of the agenda. If there are no changes, if we could have a motion, please.
Shouldn't we go to executive session before the approval of the agenda?
No, we do the approval of the agenda just before we go into executive session.
Okay. Okay. I'm switched back. Okay.
Okay, so I moved approval of the agenda.
I second. This is Sarah.
Okay, we have a motion from Dr. Gonzalez, a second from Board Member Bozay. We'll do a roll call vote. Vice President Price.
Yes.
Secretary Garcia. He's not on this call. Dr. Gonzalez.
Yes.
Board Member Bozay.
Yes.
And the president votes yes. Thank you very much. Now, we need to go into executive session. Anybody feeling a motion to take us into executive session?
I'll make a motion that we move into executive session where we're going to discuss limited personnel matters, collective bargaining, and threatened or pending legislation.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Madam President,
Go ahead, Dr. Garcia.
I think we, just for the record, probably should be more specific what we're discussing under each item. And I also think it's pending litigation, not legislation.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, let me do it again. I move that we move into executive session where we're going to discuss limited personnel matters. We will be discussing the superintendent's contract amendment and extension. We will be discussing collective bargaining, the National Education Association of Santa Fe and Santa Fe Public Schools collective bargaining agreement for 2021, 2020 and 2021, and Santa Fe Federation of School Employees and Santa Fe Public Schools collective bargaining agreement, and threatened or pending litigation. Did I get it all in?
I think you got it all in. Thank you very much. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Vice President Price. We'll do a roll call vote. We'll start with Dr. Gonzalez.
Yes.
Board Member Bozay.
Yes.
Vice President Price,
Yes.
and the president votes yes. So we are now in executive session. We will go to the other link and return here right around 5:30 for our regular session. Thank you all very much.
Hey, Rudy. Yeah, but go into where it says meetgoogles.com. It says on the body only for executive session.
I'm mute your phone
Oh,
or your
thank you, Tom.
Okay, we back in regular session. Excellent. I see Sarah. No other board members. Oh, Carmen's coming in now, it looks like. I'll give it another minute to see if we get Vice President Price, and then we'll get going.
Board President Noble, can you hear me? This is Grace, man.
Yes, hi.
Hi, great. I'm just checking because the last two meetings I couldn't use my microphone.
It's pretty finicky sometimes. Okay, well, we might as well get going, as there are three of us, and I hope Vice President Price will, as she said, push all the buttons and join us shortly. Dr. Gonzalez, do you want to bring us back from executive session? Make that motion. You're muted.
I move that we come out of executive session where we discuss limited personnel matters, the superintendent's contract amendment and extension. We discuss collective bargaining, the NEA of Santa Fe and Santa Fe Public Schools collective bargaining agreement, their 2020-2021, and the 2020-2021 Santa Fe Federation of School Employees and Santa Fe Public Schools collective bargaining agreement, and threatened or pending litigation, and no action was taken.
Thank you very much. There's a motion. Is there a second?
I second that. That's Sarah.
Thank you. Motion by Dr. Gonzalez, a second by Board Member Bozay. We will do a roll call vote coming back from executive session. Vice President Price, have you joined us? Doesn't look that way. Secretary Garcia was with us in executive session and will be coming in and out of this meeting. Dr. Gonzalez, your vote.
Yes.
Board Member Bozay.
Yes.
And the president votes yes. Thank you. We are back in the regular session. On to item 3 on the agenda, the introduction of the interpreter. Dr. Garcia.
Thank you, Madam President and members of the board. We do have an interpreter if you need it. Esta noche tenemos un intérprete, el doctor James Lujan, y está disponible para interpretar esta reunión. Si necesita ayuda, por favor, llame 701-802 5152. El número de acceso es 4277932. Gracias.
Thank you very much. Now we are on to the union update, and we're hoping we can still hear Ms. Mayer, the president of NEA Santa Fe. Are you there?
Yes, good evening.
Yep.
Good evening, board members and Superintendent Garcia and audience. I have a short statement. Just want to inform the board and the public that employees and the staff are extremely anxious about the reentry guidelines from the PED and frustrated with the lack of clarification to the questions regarding safety for themselves and students, as well as the instructional demands of the hybrid model, especially if employees have children of their own at home, that they need to certainly maintain their educational opportunities as well. NEA Santa Fe is very interested in hearing the results of the staff and parent surveys. And we want to emphasize that we do have some flexibility within the structure of the PED to, in terms of local control, to determine some of those reentry sort of procedures and protocols and curriculum instruction. So I'm hoping that we really start to listen to the staff and the parents regarding their concerns and their needs, and also their ideas about how to make this work and work successfully and safely. It's also disappointing to hear from the PED that they keep on referring to using the CARES Act money to buy new computers and use that money also to make sure that we have the cleaning materials and other things necessary to ensure a safe environment, the PPE and other safeguards that we would need to put in place. And the reason I say it's disappointing, because as you know, the legislature used that money to balance the budget for the state, and we don't have those resources anymore. So I'm not really sure how we're going to use resources that they took away. It's very disappointing to be on the town hall just about an hour ago and hear that reiterated again from the lieutenant governor. And so I'm, anticipate, that we'll have to make some difficult decisions moving forward, but I'm hopeful that the board recognizes that we need to maintain as many staff members as we can. And with some of our lower paid employees, I really think that they need to be compensated in a way that we can retain them. I have hopes that we can negotiate, provisions in our contract that might free up some resources. And we'll be talking to Deputy Superintendent Sink regarding that when we get the final word from the governor about if she is truly going to veto some of the cuts that were made to education. So I'm hoping that a few of the emails that I received, that I know that you were, some of the board members and the superintendent received as well, in terms of from the staff about reentry protocols and their concerns are really looked into. I think some of them provide additional ideas, and I'm sure that in the survey as well, we'll see different ideas coming from our staff that know our students best and understand how to educate the students of Santa Fe in a particular way, given all the challenges that they might have. So I look forward to, again, the survey and the presentation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very
this
much,
is-
Ms. Mayor. And yes, welcome, Lorraine, Vice President
Okay,
Price.
thank you. I finally got through.
All of the numbers got punched in. Glad you're here.
Yes, and bit back in certain places, but I finally got through.
I hate it when numbers bite.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I hope you got to hear a little bit of Ms. Mayer's statement, as she
I did.
mentioned. Okay, good. We have received a number of emails from staff members who have outlined some of their concerns as well. And moving on to item 5, we're now on public forum. Dr. Garcia, I'm guessing we have a couple public comments to read.
Superintendent
Yes,
Garcia. Oh, sorry.
Madam
Go ahead, Dr.
President,
Garcia.
yes, we do. And I had a couple that were sent to me that we have forwarded on to Mr. Carl. So David Carl will now go ahead and begin with public forum.
Superintendent Garcia, Board President Noble, members of the board, we have 22 people in public forum today. We'll start reading in the order that they were received. Our first one is from Mr. Stephen Tadelbaum. He writes, "Hello again. I write this email to you because I and my coworkers are being harassed by Stephanie Sheldon. Since I emailed you initially, Stephanie has created fake Facebook profiles to harass us and post on my company's Facebook page. What really gives her away is she has a copy of the email that I only sent to the school board. I am requesting further investigation be done into her state of mind. She clearly should not be allowed around children. If this harassment does not stop, I will be filing a restraining order and seeking further legal action. I truly hope that you are making your decisions on what is best for the children of your school district. I've enclosed screenshots of her latest postings. Please note the email included in her post is the one that I sent only to you. If you have questions or need to reach me, you can contact me at the phone number is listed or an email is listed. Thank you for your time and swift handling of the situation. Sincerely, Stephen Tadelbaum." And there are screenshots attached to that email. Next is from somebody who lists their name as Natalie. "Hello, I have 2 questions. 1, will children be able to choose a face shield over face masks? 2, with the hybrid model, what is the plan to keep siblings in different grades and/or schools on the same schedule? Thank you." Next, from Christina Hazlitt. "Hello, I'm the parent of an incoming 7th grader at Mandela International Magnet School. I completed the parent survey but had a couple additional questions and comments after I submitted it. I would like the board to consider having students attend school in person on Wednesdays, alternating between group 1 and group 2, so that every student attends school 3 days a week, every other week. I question whether we need an entire day to clean the school in the middle of the week, given that COVID-19 is primarily transmissible through in-person contact and aerosols. Also, students at least those in grades 7 through 12 could be responsible for wiping down their desks every time they come to a new desk. One other thought I asked the board to consider is whether the students could stay in the same classroom all day while the teachers move from classroom to classroom. This seems like it would reduce the number of people each student is in contact with each day. Thank you for considering all of these options, Christina Hazlitt." Next, from Gail and Shellis. "Members of the board, I'm writing to add public comment as the board discusses plans for the school to begin in August. I feel strongly that with the current pandemic numbers we are seeing, there is no way to protect students or teachers from the spread of the virus with the full re-entry or hybrid models. This virus is out of control in our neighboring states of Arizona and Texas, and our governor has rolled back plans for further opening New Mexico so that we are not in the same position. Even with all the safety protocols put into place as outlined in the task force and explained in the surveys sent to parents and staff with either of these models, I think it would be just a matter of time before we see COVID cases in the schools. This puts all of us at risk. I am a teacher and love my classroom and students, but I will not expose myself or my family to this. I believe the only safe option is to begin the school year with remote learning until we have a proven and safe vaccine available for all. I am hopeful that will be soon, but until then, I am not comfortable going back into the school building with any number of students in my class. I will be forced to take a leave of absence from teaching or find an online teaching position elsewhere. Our emergency distance learning from the last quarter of school was successful, given that teachers and students had little training or preparation for it. We learned quite a bit about how to deliver instruction and content, keep students engaged, and create an online classroom community. While this is not ideal for many parents, putting a burden on them to be partners in their child's daily learning, It is much wiser and safer than sending students and teachers into school buildings with no assurance of containing the spread of COVID. I am confident that we can make it work. Rather than spending money on plexiglass shields, thermometers, and masks, I would like to see SFPS put the limited financial resources available into providing curriculum materials, texts and packets, devices, connectivity, supplies, and training for home use by students and teachers, so that we can start off the school year in a positive, well-equipped manner. When the number of new cases in New Mexico is 0, then we could think about going back into classrooms. Thank you for the opportunity to add my thoughts. Gail Anchelis, SFPS kindergarten teacher. Up next is Genesis Garcia. Hello, I was directed by you from Miss Jeffrey from Wood Gormley Elementary School. I have a few issues that need to be resolved, but the first thing is that I'm going to be moving to Kansas and will no longer be in SFPS schools. I still need to drop off my instrument books and withdrawal form from school, but I haven't seemed to get a response from Miss Jeffrey's secretary, and me and my family are on a tight schedule. Please get back to me as soon as possible. Keep safe. Sincerely, Genesis Garcia. Next is from Rod Melling. This is rather long. Greetings, school board members, SFPS administrators, invited guests, and concerned citizens. My name is Rod Melling. I teach at Mandela International Magnet School and have been teaching in Santa Fe for 16 years. I'm sure that everyone here shares two goals: a high quality education with equal access for all of our children, and a healthy, safe environment for teaching and learning. To achieve these goals, the PED has issued guidelines for school reopening on what has been called a hybrid model, combining in-person learning with distance learning. As nationwide evidence, including New Mexico, suggests, safe in-person learning is likely to be severely restricted. As a result, distance learning will be a significant component of this model. Distance learning should really be called disadvantaged learning. Parents, students, teachers, and administrators are aware that distance learning not only penalizes students, but especially penalizes the very students who are already the most shortchanged in our educational system. These students have a right and an urgent need for high quality, equal access education. If distance learning is disadvantaged learning, what is the alternative? I believe that there is an alternative. The question is, do we have the courage and determination to pursue it? The school board should consider the following approach. 1, delay the opening of school until April 1st, 2021, and conduct an April 1st to December 1st 9-month school year. 2, launch an all-out campaign to gain the funds needed to maintain and improve quality education for all students in Santa Fe and New Mexico. Why delay the school year? 3 reasons. 1, over the next 9 months, meaningful progress is likely to be made toward the development of a vaccine, treatment, and management of the coronavirus. This is likely to make an in-person education possible. 2, a delay to April 1st avoids conducting school during the potentially deadly fall and winter flu virus season. And 3, a delay is not lost time. Rather, it opens a window to effectively prepare for school reopening, including mounting an all-out campaign for funding. Why an all-out campaign for funding? Any detailed look at the requirements for in-person teaching in smaller, safer groups shows that more teachers, paraprofessionals, administrative staff, technical staff, healthcare staff, and janitorial staff are essential to make in-person school possible. Others have and will present the evidence for this tonight. Are there funds? Yes, there are funds. The question is whether there is the will to go out and get them. Black Lives mattered when people across the country insisted that they really do matter, and then built a determined social protest movement to back that up. Do our children's lives matter any less? Does quality education matter any less? I don't need to answer those questions. Let's commit ourselves to a 6-month campaign to obtain the funds we need for Santa Fe and for the state of New Mexico. Let's begin with letters and petitions. Let's organize parent, teacher, student, and neighborhood committees to discuss next steps. Let's think about rallies, demonstrations, marches, and other creative and compelling actions to demand that the funds for our educational crisis be made available. Let's call on the National Education Association to act like a real union. Where would the funds come from? From the Federal Reserve Fund, from funding currently allocated elsewhere, from an emergency tax on our biggest corporations and our most wealthy citizens. Hardly too much to ask if our children actually are our future. 5 years from now, do we want to look back at this moment and say, you know, we really should have done something to prevent an entire generation of young people from losing out on their future prospects? Or do we want to look back and say, we showed up where we were, we were there, we conducted the biggest, boldest Save Our Children campaign Santa Fe, New Mexico have ever seen. It was our finest hour. In our hearts, I think we all know the answer. Thank you, Rod Melling. Okay, up next from Megan McLean. Hi, I'm a student in Santa Fe. I want to let you know that online schooling is not working for me or my siblings. All of us have had problems, whether they be with our computers or with trying to learn in this new format. Learning and doing work was very difficult, frustrating, and unpredictable for us, and all of us really despised the experience. That said, I would really like for school to continue in person this school year, however it can be managed. It would be infinitely, better for all of us if you required masks and distancing as best as you can. I'm sure everyone can make it work. Thank you very much. This one also says it's from Megan McLean. I feel the kids should make a full entry back to school this August for the following reasons. 1, virtual learning does not work at all for some students. I have 4 kids who all receive almost all A's and some B's and have good attitudes about school. Our experience with virtual learning was not a good one. My older kids were not challenged at all and went from loving school to hating it. They completed daily work in about 30 minutes and spent the rest of their time playing learning games on their devices. My youngest had the most trouble with the online system. He was completely unengaged. He's a very social kid and needs the stimulation and feedback that a teacher and other students provide. If he continues to stay home, I'm really concerned that he may forget how to write and will have an irreversible slide backwards in his progress across his education. This is a gifted student who receives all A's and was at the top of his class. 2, virtual learning involves entirely too much screen time. A lot of parents understand the value in limiting screen time. If kids have too much, it takes them a long time to re-engage with family and their behavior suffers. More writing using actual writing implements and engagement with people is needed. 3, since the economy has reopened, the schools should follow suit. It is unfair to force parents who must work outside the home to make a choice between earning a wage and leaving their children at home unsupervised. 4, it is unfair to place parents in the position of being teachers and tech support. This is difficult when one parent is home and not working. It is extremely difficult for parents who are working from home and are trying to complete their own work. 5, families need time to focus on work and time to focus on family. It is a terrible feeling to have the children at home and not be able to give attention to them because you must work. It is a much better system to have parents able to concentrate on work while kids are doing the same at school during the day. And then in the evening, proper attention can be fully focused on the family. Thank you for considering my comment, Megan McLean. This one also says it's from Megan McLean. This was just a repeat of a previous one. My apologies. From Roberta Johansson. Hello, my name is Roberta Johansson. I'm a mom. I have 2 boys that are in Santa Fe High and one has asthma. He is going to 10th and my younger one 9th. I don't feel comfortable with them going to school with this virus going around. Still, I don't want them to get sick. I rather have them doing the online school what they are doing. I want them to wait till next year, 2021, but not this year. My son are Joseph Sandoval, Esteban Sandoval, 10th and 9th grade, Santa Fe High. This one says it's from Megan McLean. Hello, thank you for listening. I'm very concerned about the idea to only allow K to 3 to go back to school. My incoming 5th grader really needs the engagement and direction in-person school provides. The virtual school did not work for him. My incoming 7th grader will be starting a new school and needs the opportunity to make friends there. This is not possible online. My incoming 9th graders have always loved school. They hated it during the spring. They are gifted students at risk of becoming bored and severely under-challenged. If there is a choice to have some students in school, why not allow the kids who want to return and whose parents want them to return to go back and live stream classes for the ones who want to stay home? For the ones at home, they would actually have structure and a normal school day. Thank you, Megan McLean. This one is from Lena Herman. Dear Board of Education members, I appreciate the options you are considering to keep our children safe from COVID-19 while providing them with quality education. As a mother of a senior at Santa Fe High class of 2021, I made sure I discussed the 3 options with him before I filled out the survey. However, I was surprised to hear that the district also sent a survey to the students in grades 4 to 12. I consider surveying the students unnecessary as this is a family decision when it comes to health decisions. They are still minors. Thank you, Lena Herman. This is from Elizabeth Daly. If we have a hybrid model for schools this year, can we be guaranteed that siblings will be assigned to attend on the same days? This from Paul Christman. Please consider all lunches to be eaten in individual classrooms. No matter how SFPS configures cafeteria/gym eating, kids will remove their masks and too many kids will be in close proximity. Lunches could be pre-served onto trays or be in bags and then delivered in carts, much like Chrome carts deliver computers. Kids eating with the same 15 to 25 others spread out in a classroom is better than 100 or more eating in a big room. Paul Chrisman. This is from Reed Burgess. Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Garcia, I am a teacher at Capitol High School, and I wanted to share with you my growing concerns about reentry. There are a host of logistical concerns I have that I do not mention below. Instead, my focus is on safety from an infection point of view. I do have many other concerns about the ability of staff and students to adhere to safety protocols upon return. As we approach the start of the 2020-2021 school year, evidence about the nature of SARS-CoV-2 virus is giving me a lot of apprehension about what reopening might mean for our students, staff, student families, and the community at large. What follows are some of the reasons I am apprehensive about a return to school, even in a hybrid model. I have included links when possible from news reports and studies. Schools check all of the boxes necessary for viral transmission. Transmission is especially aggressive indoors when several people are in the same space for a sustained amount of time, sharing the same air. As we have seen with healthcare workers, masks and other PPE only go so far when many people share the same air for more than brief encounters while indoors. Infection of children, especially teens, is possible and more common. Children and teens do shed the virus, and it has been demonstrated that they lead to its spread. Recently, students who traveled to Myrtle Beach have been linked to outbreaks, and there's a link to a news piece. 4 out of 5 teens who are infected and infectious will not manifest screenable or noticeable symptoms. Most teens will not know they are infected. Barring a nasal swab PCR test, there will be no way for the schools to screen them for infection. This will increase the chances of spread before any sort of detection or tracing will be possible. There's another link there. A study of Japan's initial outbreak shows that much of the spread was driven by younger people and that 40% of the spread originated with pre-symptomatic or asymptomatic infected individuals. Another link there. Even in situations where there are resources and aggressive protocols, access to nasal swab PCR tests and PPE, it seems that viral spread is very difficult to control. The U.S. Army tested 640 recruits, many close to high school age, on entry to boot camp. 4 tested positive and isolated. All 640 recruits were subsequently monitored for 2 weeks before training began. 8 days into training, 22%, 142 of 640 of the recruits tested positive for COVID-19, despite the entry screening, 2 weeks monitoring, and access to high quality testing and PPE. Again, another link. A return to high school has led to outbreaks in other countries. In Israel, a single infected student led to the infection of 116 other students and 14 teachers in a single school. This happened despite cases trending downward in Israel and initially strong reopening precautions taken by Israeli schools. It is also not the only school in Israel where reopening led to renewed spread of the virus. Another link. Teachers also infect their students. After a night out, a South Korean teacher became infected with COVID-19. They were traced to the infection of 6 students, a parent, and another teacher. A large percentage of teachers belong to an at-risk group for complication or death from COVID-19. Almost 1/3 of all public school teachers are over the age of 50. There's a link there. Many people who suffer mild, in quotes, cases and who are not in high-risk categories seem to be facing long life and long-term complications from the infection. These complications include lung scarring, heart damage, neurological damage, and mental health effects. Studies of asymptomatic patients are even showing lung scans consistent with permanent damage. This is in line with evidence from SARS-1, where around 30% of infected individuals had permanent lung damage. The long-term health consequences to students and staff could be devastating. Another link. Cold and flu season will cause panic and disruption. Schools will reopen and will, as they always do, become drivers of cold and flu spread. As staff become sick, we will be encouraged and likely to take sick leave when displaying symptoms. We are already struggling to fill classrooms when substitutes are needed, and the availability of substitutes is sure to be limited. We know this has a real impact on instruction. The pool of potential substitutes is made up of many retirees and otherwise at-risk individuals. I believe many substitutes will justifiably choose caution and avoid the dangers of a return to school presents under the current circumstances. If a teacher does in fact become infected with COVID-19, they would need a substitute for a minimum of a few weeks and possibly months, assuming they survive their infection. The disruption to instruction may be even greater than if we begin a full year or semester with the expectation that it would be online. The risks of COVID-19 that drove school closures in March have only intensified. There are now more infections than when schools initially closed. Since Thursday, when I began drafting this letter, Santa Fe County has added 28 cases, a growth of 13.5%. If spread does occur in schools, which may be likely, we may be faced with sudden closures and a return to distance learning anyway. Such a transition would harm instruction and burden students and teachers. Beyond my concerns for staff and teacher safety, known about this virus, even though young people are hospitalized and die at a much lower, people are suffering long-term consequences, including multi-system inflammatory syndromes, to worry many healthcare professionals. COVID-19 is novel and so much remains unknown. We currently have no reliable treatment and no cure for the deadliest / most infectious widespread pandemic in more than a century. Returning to school seems like a significant risk to our community's health, especially at a time when cases are rising and the long-term consequences are just barely understood. Pandemics are not beaten by underreaction. As a teacher, I really have issues with remote learning, and I have come to believe it is suboptimal in almost every way. I really want to return to the classroom and get back in the lab. I am more convinced than ever that it's the best way to educate young minds. Despite that, I feel like the virus and the harm it can do to students and staff is far too serious to take the risk of reopening prematurely. I hope I'm wrong, but nothing in the news or in recent studies has given me the impression that it will be safe. I recognize there are no easy choices when it comes to returning to school, but the safety risks of re-entry seem very real and very hard to overcome. I am grateful that the dangers of school-driven spread are already being acknowledged and the districts are finding ways for at-risk teachers to not return. I hope you'll consider the health of all students and staff. I thank the board for their time and consideration. Reed Burgess, teacher, Capitol High School. All right, next is Alicia Sanchez. 1, since it was important to keep kids home with remote learning all spring, what circumstances have changed since May regarding coronavirus that would then support putting the kids back in the classroom? 2, if some students are remote learning and others are in the classroom, how will the teachers support and teach all of the students? Thank you, Alicia Sanchez, mother of 3 at Carlos Gilbert. Next is Lisa Goldman. The most important thing for children to learn from their elders is knowing what is most important in life, namely the health, safety, and well-being of their families and communities, of themselves, their friends, their parents and grandparents. If we cannot teach them that these are the most important things in life, then we don't deserve to call ourselves educators. Sincerely, Lisa Jo Goldman and Dan Perlman. Next is Sean O'Neill. Will all staff and students be required to be tested before the beginning of the school year? When and where will this testing take place? Will there be any exceptions made for staff and students who do not get tested? According to the National Institute of Health, the COVID-19 virus can live on surfaces for as long as 3 to 4 days, depending upon the surface. Will measures be put in place to disinfect all belongings brought into the school environment? Will Santa Fe Public Schools ensure that any staff member who becomes infected be covered under workman's compensation? Also, will Santa Fe Public Schools agree to compensate any family members of the infected staff member who becomes infected? Multiple states, New Mexico included, are experiencing spikes in COVID-19 cases. It doesn't appear that the curve has in any way flattened, which would indicate that this is currently unsafe to open schools. Also, health experts and governmental agencies are predicting that these numbers will increase this fall. Based on current information, why do you consider opening schools in a month's time to be safe? Large numbers of high school students are currently employed out in the community. Many of these students are often interacting with the public as part of their employment. This places these students at high risk for contracting, carrying, and spreading COVID-19. Research indicates that the majority of young people will display minimal symptoms and are more likely to be asymptomatic, yet carry adult levels of the virus. Will teachers be expected to teach online after teaching in their classroom for the required school day? Sean O'Neill, special education teacher, Santa Fe High School, Vice President, NEA Santa Fe. Next is Cynthia Areola. Will staff also be divided into 2 groups, like planned for students, in order to avoid cross-contamination between student groups? Next is Jennifer Ann Gilmore. My household is at high risk of dangerous complications should this disease infect one of our children. We feel strongly that the continuation of remote learning is the only responsible response to the current situation until such time as significant scientific and medical advances are achieved to mitigate the profoundly dangerous effects of the virus on our bodies and our society. Please make the right decision and choose the path of caution. Help us maintain maximum distance until we can safely approach a return to normal. Michael Gilmore. This second portion, I also have grave concerns about returning to the classroom at this point. I strongly believe it will be impossible for children to maintain the strict guidelines necessary to prevent the spread of the virus. I also have concerns for the teachers and staff who will not have the choice to stay home. Thanks to the swift, decisive actions of our governor and the abidance of our citizens, New Mexico has managed to avert the dangerous situations we have seen in states like New York and are beginning to see in Texas and Florida. Why would we wish to be careless at this juncture? I feel strongly that our return to school will only set the stage for an overloaded healthcare system here in Santa Fe. Jennifer Gilmore. Next is Kieran Gilmore. I am worried about going back to school in person this year. This year I'll be going into 6th grade and I'm worried about what the outcome might be of full school reentry. There are people in my household who have underlying conditions and could have a severe reaction to the virus if me or any of my siblings brought it home. I'm a kid, so of course I know the inner workings. Late last year in my class, a kid sneezed on a bookshelf, which I just happened to be getting a book from. A few days later, I went to the doctor and found out I had strep throat. When I returned to school a few days later, I found out that the person who had sneezed all over those books not only had strep throat, but also had the flu. Also, how are we supposed to keep kindergartners' fingers out of their mouths and noses? This is one of many examples. Lastly, I feel that it is not worth the hassle and danger of going to school in person every day. Kieran Gilmore. And our final one is Yvette Martinez. And it is rather long. Okay, my name is Yvette Martinez. I'm a veteran science and health teacher in public schools for the past 22 years here in Santa Fe. I am also a parent of 21 and 15-year-olds who attended SFPS. I've written for hours now, trying to summarize all the things I've wanted to say over years of paying attention to the Santa Fe Public Schools Board of Education, attending meetings or streaming them, and being on the front lines as a teacher. I have an important perspective as a veteran teacher in Santa Fe community, a person of color, a woman in science, and an activist. I have worked in the district for 5 years in 4 different schools, so I have been able to observe quite a bit of how things operate in different places. I emailed and called the president of the BOE, Ms. Noble, to request to address the board and read the statement myself during the union update. As I am a union member and the vice president for a couple more weeks, I did not receive an email response and her voicemail box was full. I am sending board members a statement of my experiences in SFPS as a parent and as an employee because our own story, understanding who we are, why we're here, is the first step in truly transforming our systems, especially our school and criminal justice systems. I'm sure you are well aware of the correlation between the lack of, quote, sufficient education and the increased likelihood of entering the prison system. Self and social justice is a critical understanding in order to move forward with this vital work ahead of us in this new climate of equality and justice for all. What is most important now is that we and you, the leaders, take the opportunity that this crisis has thrust upon us to transform and restructure the system. If we do not act boldly in this moment, we will squander our chance. For 20 plus years, I have been working towards this goal. I want to first acknowledge and appreciate the true effort and care so many educators take in doing this work. All of the good stories, the students and teachers, administrators who support them, who are highlighted at BOE meetings are important and deserve the light shown on them. Because of individual teachers, parents, and administrators, we have these positive examples of success. I am not diminishing these at all. I raise them up with you. Unfortunately, there is always the other side of the coin. Under the shiny, smooth, the rock, the collective underbelly of our collective experience can be hard to look at directly. And yes, it requires difficult conversations. I'm afraid that what I see in much of the guidance and conversations, as well as what I experienced as we transitioned to online learning in the spring, was this effort to fit what we do in the classrooms, which is not working, see Yazi Martinez, into this new virtual environment. This is our chance to address more specific needs and the deficiencies we know exist in at all grade levels. Again, many individual teachers, as well as the DLCs and tech department, put in grand efforts to be creative, innovative, and make it work. But we are talking systems here and now that need to be transformed. How can we restructure this year to address the many issues brought to light in the Martinez-Yazzie case? the issues many of us on the front lines already knew and have witnessed for years. I was one of the volunteers to transfer into an open math position and took over a 6th grade math class in January of 2020. I love those 6th graders. The range of abilities and the deficiencies I observed need to be dealt with. Let's utilize all this data gathered every year on each student to build a strategy to incorporate the remedies into the reentry. Prior to this pandemic, it was alarming to see students continue on into the next math level without the background knowledge and skills. They are set up to fail. The teachers who are ready to teach them are also likely to fail because of the overwhelming need. As far as teaching and learning, the district needs to look at learning management systems available so teachers can use and modify existing curriculum that's online. The most interesting suggestion from a colleague as far as hybrid models was students coming in groups that rotate over 3 weeks, 1 week in school and 2 weeks off, leaving time to detect infections. It was also suggested that leaders study what has been tried in various countries in Europe that have returned to schools in some form. Lastly, just as police unions and police departments must work together and identify issues within bargaining agreements that need to change in order to facilitate systemic changes, our teachers unions and districts must do the same. SFPS and NEA Santa Fe have an excellent agreement. However, my observations in the various schools in which I have worked is that there needs to be much, much better accountability and enforcement, starting with Article 3, differentiated autonomy and school-based decision-making. I also hope this local does more to engage and activate their members. Our most recent election had 97 members vote out of over 600 members. All but one position for executive board members was contested. This is not engagement. Communication to our members must improve. It's easy to put things down in writing and it looks great. It's the implementation, monitoring, adjusting, and evaluating that's the challenge. Please engage the community in a variety of ways so that we can meet the challenge together as a community. Thank you. And Superintendent Garcia, Board President Noble, members of the board, that is all for public forum.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carl. That was a lot of good reading by you. Much appreciated. Okay, anything on board announcements and follow-up from the board? Seeing and hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to superintendent announcements and follow-up. Dr. Garcia.
Thank you. Let's see. Thank you, Madam President and members of the board. We have our superintendent's announcements on the Superintendent's Challenge winners. They are pre-K, Isabella and Emma Beeson, Cesar Chavez and Nino Otero. They work together on a Lego building. Kindergarten, Jessica Hayes, Wood Gormley, a collage. First grade, Kaylee Babcock, Amy Bill, freestyle science experiment. Second grade, Brianna Turner, Kearney, freestyle diorama. Third grade, Madigan Schreck, Wood Gormley, drawing, art using recycled materials. Fourth grade, Mila and Sage Sanchez, Wood Gormley, they did a skit. Fifth grade, Avery Roberts, Amy Bill, freestyle sewing. Sixth grade, Keshav Molu, Carlos Gilbert, a drawing. Seventh grade, Aubrey Peralta, Milagro, a drawing. Eighth grade, Israel Urbina IV, Gonzalez, poetry. Ninth grade, Nayeli Gutierrez Chavez, Capitol High, a painting. 10th grade, Rachel Anderson, Santa Fe High, a musical performance. 11th grade, Niveditha Bala Mandela, a painting. 12th grade, Lila Pierpoint, Santa Fe High, a painting. Congratulations to each of these students who will each take home $135. We have a brief video of their entries. Mr. Carl.
Yeah, I'm going to try and share my screen. And let's go here and share the sound. Okay. Can everybody see the video? All right, I'm going to play now.
proud of just the kids are so talented and they continue to submit entries. So very proud of them that they're keeping engaged. Graduation ceremonies and diploma celebrations were really quite amazing this year. And I want to give a special shout out to all of the high school principals. They did an amazing job. ECO, the Academy, Mandela, Capitol High, Santa Fe High. And I also want to give a special shout out to Larry Chavez, who coordinated all of these efforts and did a great job, and to the team behind him, as well as Mario and Mark, who helped with the traffic. And I'm looking here for a text that I received. Here we go. Participation in the diploma celebrations was amazing. ECO had 28 of 31 students participate. The Academy, 18 of 21. Mandela, 25 of 25, 100%. Santa Fe High, 295 out of 320. And Capitol High, 257 out of 272. So the participation rate ranged from 86% to 100%, with 3 in the 90s, ECO, Santa Fe High, and Capitol. So kids wanted to engage. And then the viewership on the virtuals were also great. We'd like to thank everyone who made this a great experience. We have a short video montage regarding the graduations, and the board was well represented by President Noble, who gave a really inspired speech to the students. So quick montage on that.
Can everybody still see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
This is Tom Udall.
My name is Kate Noble.
Greetings to the ECO, the Mandela International Baccalaureate School, Santa Fe High School, Capitol High School, the Academy, and Engage high school graduating classes of 2020.
Congratulations. Today marks one of life's great milestones, your graduation from high school.
You have achieved a milestone in your life that will bring you closer to reaching your dreams.
This is a lifelong endeavor, and I know that this class, this unique 2020 senior class, will rise to that occasion.
Lesser people would have succumbed to such challenging circumstances.
Through it all, you have persevered and were able to accomplish something spectacular.
We had to adapt to quarantining, social distancing, staying at home all the time, wearing masks, staying clean and healthy more than ever.
We have to be the generation to stand up and make a change.
The unknown is scary no matter what, but the fact that social change is in the hands of such competent and driven people can only instill confidence that this change will be for the better.
Don't let COVID-19 define our senior year, and don't let it define us.
You have all persevered and graduated from high school, even though it wasn't always easy.
You are all role models. You should all be proud. You have broken away from the tradition we all held high and created something out of what felt like nothing.
Our world ahead is going to be strange. It is going to be difficult. But most importantly, it is going to be new.
Liana Raylene Anaya.
Aaron Lazarus Encinas.
Attending Carnegie Mellon University, Malcolm Ayers.
Rowan Nadon, our valedictorian.
Jocelyn Ochoa.
Kelly Nayan Dominguez Fierro.
And your 2020 salutatorian, Olivia Hogan.
Rosalie Grego.
And that's it.
Well, you got a flavor of it, and obviously it was special for all of them. It's kind of interesting how you did that, David. He put I said a different address for each one, the same message, but I introduced them. It looked like I said them all at one time. But getting that feeling, you're still on, David. I think that the spirit of our students and our faculty and staff, you just get the flavor of how beautiful it was, right? I mean, even if it was virtual, even if it wasn't the same, that excitement of starting anew, the commencement of beginning the next phase of their lives, you just captured it. It was wonderful. I wish we could have given them a traditional one, and if they still want one, whenever those orders change, we will do it. So I don't know if anybody wants to comment on graduations before I move on.
Board President Noble, Superintendent Garcia, members of the board, I attended all of the.
I'm on as an attendee. I cannot get on.
Mr. Secretary, you are on. We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now? I'm very apologize.
Yeah, we've been able to hear you.
Okay, good. Okay, no, okay, now I'm okay. Thank you.
Okay, anyway, I attended all of the virtual graduations, and I'm telling you, it was kind of a sad day. I don't remember what was happening, but there's so many things happening every day that are problematic. And listening to those kids and talk about their futures and what they've been through just really gave me a lot of hope for our future. So I felt really good about all of it. And I did feel bad that it wasn't a real graduation, but I thought they did an incredible job, all of the schools. That's it.
Dr. Garcia, President Noble, if I can make change your mind, this is Mario. May I say something?
To the president, yes. I guess it's up to go through the president.
President Noble, can I say something? I can't hear her.
Looks like her, it says that she's on and she has a mic.
I just want to say this, President Noble, board members, Superintendent Dr. Garcia, during the graduation, there were so many parents that are very thankful for everything that the district did to make this graduation for these kids as special as possible. I got so many parents telling us thank you, that we all did something for them. And I really appreciate being part of this for all of you. And thank you, Dr. Garcia and the board members, because the kids went through a very different graduation, but so many parents were very, very thankful. We're at the front lines, between Mark and our team, meeting all the parents and kids and seniors. It was a really fun time for us as well.
Great.
Thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
We can hear you, Board President.
Okay, I changed microphones. Sorry about that.
Okay, so again, congratulations to the class of 2020. You are trailblazers for sure. And just a little bit on the legislative session, the special session, the governor has until July 12th to act on legislation or it will be pocket vetoed. Overall, the state equalization guarantee was cut by 15.8 million. The state equalization guarantee has been reduced from the 2% to 1% for a net increase of 32.4 million. We'll see what the cut looks like for us once the unit value has been set. Let's see, the new language provides a limit to health insurance premium increases to 6%. There was reductions to the transportation distribution by 307,000. Let's see here. Senate Bill 5 has been signed by the governor that voids certain capital projects. Included in the voided projects is 34,000 for Nina Otero, 10,000 for development of an alternative site facility and planning. I'm not sure which facility that was. It might have been ECO. 35,000 to plan, design, and construct, purchase, equip improvements to Kearney. 10,000 to plan, design, construct improvements to Mandela, and 50,000 to purchase resources for the library at Milagro. Some of these may have been obviously pork that various legislators may have promoted. House Memorial 1 opposing dismissing the state versus Yazzie lawsuit did not pass. I did issue a statement on the memorial, but we prevailed yesterday in court where the judge did not dismiss the case. So, you know, we're all very happy and excited about that. We extended the survey input time because we had many parents that, you know, don't always change their email addresses with us, or they haven't been changed since their kids registered when they registered in elementary. And so we had about 1,000 or so that we had to resend, or people were contacting us. And so we did extend the time. What else did I want to share? The special meeting and study sessions will need to be scheduled for the month of July so that we can have the budget adjustment requests. And so we will keep you posted. There are also some policies that have to be developed for you by the board, or presented to the board rather, to deal with reentry. I also want to give a shout out to the virtual scrub club. Again, led by Stephanie Gurule-Leba. As part of this year's extended learning program, students learned about the variation inheritance traits using APB methods, which empowers students to become independent in the classroom and helps them to build sets to apply an open-ended design problem. Students created an electronic journal during the club. Again, all of this was virtual. Our thanks to Ms. Gurule-Leba with the Junior Biomedical Career Exploration Program at Ortiz. And just very pleased with that program. And I don't know how many of you get the Santa Fe, well, the New Mexican and the Parade magazine, but on May 26th, the Santa Fe New Mexican reported that Braulio Chavez, who attended Ortiz this year, he'll attend New Mexico School for the Arts in 7th grade, has been distributing plushie creations to people who make a monetary donation to the Food Depot. He had intended to do a fundraiser for the Santa Fe Animal Shelter and Humane Society, but switched because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Parade magazine also highlighted Braulio last Sunday as part of celebrating Americans from all 50 states who are spreading peace, lending a helping hand, and building community. So congratulations and thank you, Braulio, for your hard work. And that concludes Superintendent's announcements for this evening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Garcia.
So at this time, I think we're ready for presentations if you are, Madam President.
Yes, go on to the main event.
Main event. And so, Madam President, we would like for, if it will be okay with the board, if you will note the slides that you have a question, because we very well may be answering the questions as we go through the presentation. And then as you've done it in study sessions, Madam President, you can just say any questions on the particular slides and we'll go from there. This document is available on the website for parents to read. Can we go ahead and show the presentation, Dr. Ryan? We're not going to read everything on here. It's very dense and we'd be here another 2 hours. So we really want people to read this. I want to make real clear that this is a planning overview. We have to submit assurances, basically our plan, to the board on July 15th. And you're going to hear me say that on several occasions. We want to interact with our community. We want to listen to them, but we have a very short timeline. I want to share a personal statement to all of you. It's not prepared, but everybody that's watching or that will watch this later. You know, the old saying, you can't please everyone or you can't make everyone happy. My goal is to really please everyone and make everyone happy. And what I mean by that is that I hope that we can match up the parents that really don't want their children to come back to school and the faculty and staff that really have medical issues or major concerns about coming back. Obviously, we have to prioritize those people that do have medical issues, that we can work out a system that can meet everyone's needs. There are some families that have to come back, that having children at home would be very, very difficult for them because they have jobs that they have to go to. The PED has prioritized bringing back kindergarten through third grade or pre-K through third grade. Those are foundational years. I also want to just to make one other statement. You'll hear it through the presentation. The guidance that we received, and we exceeded it, but what was provided by the district in terms of remote learning was different than what you will see this fall. You will see a lot more structure. We got survey input from the first survey, and we were aware of certain things like multiple platforms and whatnot. So it will look different. But what are two guiding things that are going to make all the difference in the world is the number of people from those surveys that are interested in different models. We may have to survey again by school to, we know what schools people are from, but as we continue to refine, we may need to have surveys with quicker turnaround. The other is looking at space. And I want to talk about that for a second. So those are the two factors, the types of models that people want, both the faculty and staff and our parents and families. And the other is space. And you would think, well, it's pretty simple. You could just take 50% of your capacity in a building right now and know that that's the space you have. Well, we've looked at floor plans, but we'll also have to go in and measure, because you could take 50% of a floor plan, say in a kindergarten class, but you've got a reading loft, right? And you've got a play area. You don't have the same amount of space. And so it's quite a task to match up the space with what the demands are. So with that, my goal is hopefully we can make everybody happy. All right, so let's go to the first slide. And the guiding principles and our approach, the PED guiding principles and our approach align. But I want to say that our number one goal first is the health and safety of all of our students and staff. And the decisions that are made, the PED is making them based on science and data. These guidelines, these basic guidelines, which they have been called requirements in some documents and guidelines in others, we're hoping to get clarification from the PED tomorrow, is not that the district dreamed this up as a way to re-enter. Let's go to the next slide. Again, we will, the PED says operate strictly according to hybrid guidelines, but we have gotten clear guidance in our request for information that the district would be allowed to offer a remote and a full reentry model. So there are different ways of looking at hybrid. Face coverings are going to be required. It is our plan to provide them, monitoring staff on a daily basis, meals being provided to students during in-person and instruction remote learning. Let's go to the next slide. I also want to say that this is not the plan. We also will have a technical manual that will support it, that goes into far greater detail. Again, the staff have left no stone unturned when we talk about safety and health. I really want people to understand that this is a top priority for us. We intend to have regular communication with our stakeholders. The plans that we are looking at, we can readily move from one model to another, depending on the health conditions, right, in our, or the pandemic conditions in our community. The PED has prioritized kindergarten through 3rd grade and special education students who are in self-contained classes for face-to-face instruction. And you might ask why. Their foundational years, they're very, very, very critical. We also need to, again, ensure that seniors are on track. And what's just interesting here, in the event of a total remote, which means schools would be closed, they are still recommending that we bring these kids into school. Now, I know that sounds counterintuitive. There have been many reports, though, that the children, quite frankly, may be safer in these environments than they would in other environments, and for a number of reasons, social emotional well-being and other supports that kids get in school. Let's go to the next slide. Our guiding principles and approaches around early assessment. We will use the first part of school. Now, if we have extended learning, depending on how broadly we have that, and I'll talk about that in a minute, to assess skill gaps. It's one of the first things we want to do, to see what gaps kids have from the spring, so that we can spend the first week or two getting kids back up to speed and working on those gaps. Let's go to the next slide. Safe operating categories. So I just want to go over these very quickly. You'll hear these terms used. Remote, students engage in remote learning, right? It'll look different than, again, what you saw this spring, and you'll be seeing that a little bit later. With the exception, if possible, if feasible, special education in those self-contained classrooms and pre-K actually through 3rd grade. Students would have a digital device and support for connectivity at home. And again, right from their document, the CARES Act funding or other funds should be used. Again, if anybody can talk to the governor, please veto that language. Hybrid, the number of students in the building at any time is capped by the number that can be accommodated while adhering to at least 6 feet of social distancing or 50% capacity. And then full reentry, all students eligible to return 5 days a week. Traditional learning with enhanced preventative measures to the greatest extent possible. Now, I'm going to show you a different model here in a second. Let's go to the next slide. The current hybrid model under consideration based on the PED guidance. You divide the kids into 2 cohorts, cohort A, cohort B, or group A, group B. All students in either cohort either go in person on a Monday or Tuesday, or a Thursday and a Friday. And then the other 3 days they're on remote, okay? Wednesday is a day for deep cleaning and disinfection between the cohorts. And then we would do that again on the weekend, even though it's not recommended or stated in the guidance. Let's go to the next one. Another hybrid model under consideration, I'm sorry, an update on extended learning. Wait, I think I'm sorry, thank you. Yeah, I think we went ahead by 2. Something else that we're thinking about around hybrid models, depending on survey results. So you could have students attend full-time, remote, or face-to-face, again with social distancing and all the guidelines, depending on how the parents and the faculty and staff fall out. Does that make sense? So instead of having kids come to school 2 days a week and then the other group 2 days a week, they would be socially distanced. They'd come every day. and the other kids would be full remote every day. So that is a possibility. Or you could bring in pre-K through 3rd grade and these self-contained kids, and then split up the rest of the students. Additional spaces, we are looking at libraries and gyms and cafeterias as classroom spaces to be able to accommodate more students if we needed to. And also, as some school districts are looking at, churches, community centers, nonprofit spaces as other places where we could bring kids. Again, you'll hear it again later. This plan is due July 15th. A little update on extended learning. Right now, we got permission from the PED to start extended learning virtually from July 27th through August 7th. We had already been approved for it, about 3,000 students and around 20 schools or 23 schools that are participating. However, preliminary results on the survey looks like more parents. Remember before when it wasn't lots of parents that wanted extended learning? That has really increased since the pandemic, and the number of teachers willing to work those additional days has increased. So we may be able, based on the number of teachers that we get, offer this to more families. It will be virtual. Again, July 27th to August 7th, more information will be forthcoming. And at this point, I believe the slide goes to Dr. Ryan.
So there's common, welcome board members, and thank you for the opportunity to present. There are several formats for delivering. You heard face-to-face, a modality for face-to-face or remote or a hybrid in between. And then within those, there's also the ability to do things synchronously and asynchronously, and synchronously being at the same time, but maybe not in the same place. Certainly, we're doing a synchronous meeting right now, even though we're in different places. We use Google Meets as our primary tool to have those synchronous typed environments. It allows for real discussion, interaction, not only between the teacher and the student, but between students and other students. And these meetings can be recorded and used for playback, either for students to review some of the materials, for students that may have missed, or for students that will be using the same content the next day. Asynchronous communication is when the teacher and the learner are in different times and places. So there's communication. In fact, synchronous communication can only happen during the time of the meeting, which could be 30 minutes or an hour, where asynchronous communication can happen throughout the day and over the weekend. So it's just a different type of communication that is having the students work on assignments independently on their own. And they would do those activities in a regular face-to-face class also. Lessons could be pre-recorded, and the teacher can then deliver the lesson in a video meeting while she's working synchronously with another set of kids or asynchronously with another set of kids. And the content is available. In fact, I've had students say to teachers that recorded their lessons and played them back saying, no offense, Mr. Teacher, but I like you better online than I do face-to-face, because I can play it over and over until I get it, as opposed to interrupting the class with another question. Anytime you do a major change, and obviously this was a major change, you go through phases. I use a model of awareness, adaptation, and transformation. First, you become aware of the problem, the why, if you will. Why do we need the change? Why is it important? Why will it infect me? And then you start leading into, how do I adapt my behaviors? And then eventually, when you learn the new skills, you start thinking about, I could transform the way I do my work, right? So it's moving from an initial stage of simply augmenting to a final stage where we rethink how we deliver instruction and engage with students and students with other students. It's not the technology that improves instruction, it's the engagement of teacher, learner, and content that improves instruction. The technology enables opportunities that you may not have had without it. In 2020, we set up an emergency shelter. We had a very short period of time to make sure every kid in the district had a device, that they had a connection to instructional materials, that teachers received training, principals received training. In fact, it was a week. We were able to connect kids, and the choice was nothing at all. We were able to connect all of our kids, or 96% of our kids initially, and then we had to work to buy more devices to get other kids. But the idea was, how do we keep the lights on? We had a survey from their parents, we got feedback from the kids, we got feedback from teachers, and we knew things weren't perfect, but the idea was to keep things up and going as opposed to a well thought out, well implemented strategy. We had, like I said, access addressed. We had professional development for administrators, teachers, 62 recorded webinars. We had multiple platforms, although district supported one was our open access Canvas, but it wasn't really ready for K3. It wasn't originally designed for us to be delivering K3. It was more something we were doing with our secondary kids. And we had parents concerned that there's way too many applications. I don't know where to put things in. But at the time, again, we were keeping the lights on. Content, teachers were provided training on some content development. We gave them a bunch of resources. We tracked what they were doing and how they were getting to it. But we were also limited. We were limited by the public education department wanted attendance and grade, had attendance and grade limitations. There was screen time, which then limited some of our contact time. We didn't have a permanent solution. We had a temporary one, and we were fully remote only. There was no other option. That is not the way it's going to be in the fall. This was keeping a continuity in our educational program. I want to say at this point that as we design for this future, it is our goal not to build a response to COVID. Our goal is to provide the resources that will help us to move into the future and continually improve. In fact, to leverage COVID to accelerate the skills that our teachers are going to have, the access that our children will have, and to eliminate the equity gap that some of our kids have access to resources at home and others don't. We also wanted to design a plan that allowed us to have one platform that could address fully online, hybrid, and remote. And that as COVID dictates, it could be fluid between those environments so that it's the same content, the same features, the same system that's delivering these instructional resources to kids. So we have a highly flexible, fluid environment that allows us to address the needs of kids and of teachers, and to give them access to high quality learning options for them. As Dr. Garcia said, I want full remote, great. I want fully face-to-face, or I want a hybrid. This model will accommodate that. And Ms. Sink's teaching and learning team and the technology team have been working feverishly to get all of the systems aligned. So next fall, you're going to see that we have multiple ways for kids to get internet connectivity as opposed to just MiFi. All of our students will continue to have devices. We'll have ongoing and comprehensive professional development that will include parents, teachers, and district administrators. We'll have a platform, one access, open access, that will align not only the secondary, but also the pre-K environment. And we're getting help from teachers and principals at K in the elementaries that are helping us to make that. We're integrating applications like Seesaw, which was popular with teachers and want to make sure that it's used, and that we try to make as much as possible the environment as seamless as a single sign-on gets you into most of your content and resources. The district is currently developing the first 4 weeks of lessons to get teachers started, with the idea that teachers will start taking over and developing, and if they have the skills, will develop already. And in this, we realize that some people are just beginning to get an idea about how we would do this in a remote. Some people don't have any idea yet. Other people are in that couple months that we were remotes. We had teachers that went from not using technology to doing amazing things. Some of those things we presented at our board meeting. So this environment is going to have people that are just starting and people that are already transforming, and we need to develop content and resources to support them all. Our fully remote, all the time kids will be in an Edgenuity program, which was designed specifically for fully remote. Our programmatic instruction is not a watered down curriculum, but 180 days instruction to make sure that kids get a year of growth in 1 year. And it has time built in for remediation and skill gap closure, as well as making sure that all kids, whether special education, bilingual, or gifted, are going to have the resources they need. Again, not as a response to the pandemic, but as a way of building a foundation that will take us forward in continuous improvement and give kids options. The adaptation phase is after you get past why do I need to change, you really need to start looking at people will start using the skills that they know as a teacher and then mimicking them in the technology that they're using. And that helps them to anchor what they know teaching with the new tools on how to teach. And often it looks like we've replicated, and this is the first response that we had when we went in the contingency mode. How do I do the same thing I used to do in face-to-face in an online program? Some of that works, some of it does not work. But once they get the skills and know how to use those technologies, they start to be able to transfer over to a phase where they can start to see, I can do things that I never thought I could do before. You heard principals talking about how much people attended the virtual open house when they didn't really attend this as well face-to-face open house. That there was different ways to expand access for kids to resources 24/7. And we start to fundamentally change how we think of our work and how we think about teaching. Again, it isn't the technology that's improving the teaching. It's the teacher that's improving the teaching because they have greater access to skills and resources, not only for them, but also their kids. We had people that told us this is amazing. It revitalized me as a teacher. We had other teachers that said, I really struggled with this. And that's why we want to be able to implement something that can address all phases of our learning. And we realize that even though we've done some amazing things up to this point, we will continue to do great things long after this crisis ends and in support of our community.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ryan. Ms. Sink, Deputy Superintendent Sink.
Good evening, President Noble, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia. I'll be discussing a little bit of the instructional program highlights. I guess some of it may be redundant to Tom Ryan's discussion, but I hope that we're just ensuring you of what we're doing, and I think all of it becomes important at that point. Santa Fe Public Schools instructional program ensures a minimum of years growth of school regardless of the instructional model. And we've been building 21st century skills for years, and it's absolutely been accelerated during this pandemic and school closure. Nonetheless, we're going to be moving forward and preparing students on these skills regardless of the pandemic. And our district, and I know you know this as well, has been well positioned to respond to this crisis and provide an advanced instructional program. In fact, we've been recognized nationally for closing the digital divide and providing equity for all. Santa Fe is building frameworks that ensure access and use for remote learning environments for all of our students. I want to show you next, if we can go to the next slide, Dr. Ryan, a couple of the proposed hybrid schedules. The first one is the elementary hybrid face-to-face and online schedule, depending whether you're in A or B on a particular day. And the reason I wanted to show you this is it looks a little overwhelming right now, and it's the kind of thing that we'll be providing a lot of PD to our teachers. The main thing I want you to see, because of what we've been told from students and parents, et cetera, that they really want to have a similar schedule at home as they did at school so that they can learn as much as they did before. And so they have some commonality to the school and environment. So you'll notice, for instance, that we begin breakfast with SEL kinds of activities. We go
Ms. Sink, please say what SEL is, please.
Social emotional learning, I'm sorry. And we have all kinds of activities in that regard, and I'm going to go over those in just a few minutes. But at any rate, and I'll just go a few more minutes on this. On the 8:30 to 9 o'clock, we begin with a mini lesson in guided practice, including work with ER/ELD students and ELD standards embedded in these lessons. And this would be synchronous, meaning that during this time, we're face-to-face with the A group, but we're synchronous with kids that are at home in the B group. We also have read alouds, we have math mini lessons, and I wanted to make sure that you all realize that we're still doing then our Math Matters. We're still going to be using all of the things that we've done from 4 years ago with our Read First Santa Fe. None of that's going to be changing. We're going to have from 10:30 to 11:15, for example, independent and small group instruction and lunch, and then on to independent and small group. We will continue with our Lanel science units and social studies lessons. So I'm trying to show here that we will try to keep things as similar to what kids have experienced in their life in school. On Wednesdays, and this could change to Fridays, or it could change to having class another day. We haven't decided these at all yet. We're just putting this out here because this is the number one that the PED is expressing, and it was actually the one that we saw most often in our research. On Wednesdays, we could do intervention and enrichment and some planning, but I see intervention and one-on-one with ELD students, special ed students. We can also have that time to do some deep sanitization, have PLCs, and office hours still for teachers toward the end of the day.
The professional learning communities that we talked to you about.
Yes, thank you. You can go ahead, Tom, to the next one.
I do want to say, I want to add in here while we're going to the next schedule, is that the guidance that we got from PED for last spring was really to get kids used to learning remotely and using the tools. And to have them focus on one or two areas, and to give teachers a lot of flexibility, which we did. Now, some people met with their kids more regularly. We had some that might have provided a lesson and then, didn't check back as frequently. This is next year, or this next school year, will be a lot more structure and a lot more predictability for parents. It's something that kids and parents need, I think, are those boundaries, and also an expectation for synchronous. So while they can do asynchronous lessons that kids can go back to, there will also be requirements for the amount of time for face-to-face synchronous learning.
So this particular schedule is an example of a middle school and high school hybrid schedule. This would be what we're showing here is Group A is on campus on this day. Group B again is remote. You'll notice that what we had worked with the 2 high school principals. In fact, we worked with 3 or 4 of them to get some input. And we could have gone, different ways on this as well. But the most, I think, agreement on was this particular one, so that the teachers could see all of the students at least 2 days a week. In this case, they would see 7, they would go through 7 periods, if you will, or 7 periods a day so that they could see all of their students. And for instance, in first period from 8:40 to 8:45, 8:55, they'd be in whole group. And again, this is synchronous instruction with the B group. They would be, the B group would be remote, but in synchronous with their classroom. From 8:55 to 9:25, in-class Group A would be structured synchronous activities, and Group B would be asynchronous. So at this point, the B group has already been given work that they can do at home. At 9:25 to 9:35, they would be again whole group again. So you can have the Socratic questioning, you can have even people in groups in the different synchronous and asynchronous, and still be able to work with the students and discussing at those different groups if you have names of groups, for instance. So teachers can be very creative, or they can do exactly what they do every day. So that part of it will always be up to teachers. What we want is more face-to-face with our students this year, and we want to give teachers a lot more professional development on how to use these digital tools, etc. So you can go ahead, Dr. Ryan, to the next one. Next slide. So I started talking about professional development and looking at best practices to support our teachers. This is our plan. We just finished providing the plan to the superintendent. And this summer, and it's already actually begun, we are building design teams to start building 4 weeks of exemplary lesson plans that demonstrate hybrid instruction. We feel like the teachers need to have more role modeling for these exemplary lessons, in that they were put into this environment so quickly that it was very difficult for them to be able to pick up this type of teaching in that short of time. And so we're building the lessons for them in 4 content areas: the math, science, social studies, and science. We will be providing, as we begin, for instance, after we get 1 week's worth of lessons done, and that may not seem that difficult, but in this kind of environment, it's taking about anywhere from 5 to 8 hours to build a good lesson. So it's taking a very large group of people to help us do it, where we have all of our departments working on it, but we have teachers as well. And teachers that were excited about it during the spring are now helping us with their best ideas as well. At any rate, we will probably, after about a week's worth of lessons, we're going to begin webinars. We'll begin webinars even with just getting back on Canvas and learning how to use it again. We'll also begin our workshops on those lessons. We'll begin webinars on our new instructional materials for math, so that teachers can start practicing, can start seeing what's coming. And then we're going to be doing this again with the teachers on August 10th and 11th. At the point that they start teaching in August on the 17th, they then will have their lessons right there in front of them for what I'm calling on-time professional development. They literally can use those lessons in their work every day for 4 weeks. If they want to augment them, if they want to change them here and there, we can feel good about that. But I really want to encourage all teachers to do this so that they can practice these, I think, skills that aren't easy to learn just right off the bat. They need practice. We're going to really hope that they stick with this for the 4 weeks and get better and better at these skills. Dr. Ryan, I'm ready. We want to ensure the special ed services will have their IEP minutes met in all models of our learning. So no matter what model they're in, they will receive these minutes. We are prioritizing for full entry for students of special ed self-contained programs such as autism, life skills, etc. We're considering a couple different schedules as well for them, but we would really like to see them on campus for those 4 days. We'll also provide different approaches for the related services, some online, some face-to-face. We're really worried though about minimizing the number of adults coming into contact with our students. So even related, if we can, very difficult with physical therapy and occupational therapy, but such as the others, I think we can possibly do it online. We're creating an environment to minimize the content with diagnostic evaluations and try to do those remotely following the CDC guidelines. I'm sorry. You can go to
Okay, I think I'm next. So as we go on now to celebrating and honoring our diversity and ensuring equity, as I've mentioned to you before, the district has exceeded what the state requires. So we have an executive equity council to meet the state requirement, but our council has 74 members. The 5 subcommittees are cultural, gender, language, policy, politics, and resource, and wellness. And we have representation also from tribal and Pueblo leadership, as well as parents. And I would like to talk about a new office that I'd like to announce. And we'll be putting out a press release tomorrow after we meet with our Equity and Diversity Council tomorrow morning. Next slide, please. Again, around diversity, equity, and engagement, utilizing existing funds and through reorganizing. I wish I had a drum roll. I am happy to announce a brand new department that we created, the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Engagement. We are transforming the engagement department, have made some adjustments, but this department will be headed by Dr. James Lujan, and he will be our new Equity and Engagement Officer, and Crystal Ibarra, who is an MSW, will be the Deputy Diversity, Equity, Engagement Officer. This department will serve to support families, staff, and students and handle complaints that deal with civil rights issues and equity and racial issues, LGBTQ, disparities with individuals with disabilities. They will collect and analyze data, looking at various factors from dropout to graduation rates, looking at the various subgroups. Events, communications, volunteer coordination will also be addressed through an equity and diversity lens. For example, if we look at our number of volunteers, we're not a particularly diverse group. So we need to up our efforts to have increase our number of volunteers that also represent our community. Dr. Lujan will be the liaison to the immigrant community. That office will also oversee what was going on in constituent services, handling transfer requests, dropout permissions, which we meet with students before we allow them to drop out, and also the student hearing process. This office will create an annual report to the superintendent and the Board of Education and the progress that we're doing to address equity and closing opportunity gaps for children of color, poor children, children with disabilities, and LGBTQ children. Let's go to the next slide. About 20% of our Native American students live outside of the city of Santa Fe, and they are the most vulnerable. And I do want to mention that what COVID-19 has done has shed a light on disparities. I know that our board, when we passed the resolution, Ms. Noble, that you brought to the board, a big thing was addressing equity. And so I think this office will go a long way. But COVID-19 has really shed a light on disparities of who has been hit harder by the pandemic, which are poor children and children of color families that also. Back to looking at the other 80% of our Native American students and families are struggling with a host of trauma-related issues. We will be implementing and working with the CNI department on mandatory anti-racist teacher training at the start of our August week activities and continue throughout the year. We want to set expectations for teachers and departments to complete culturally relevant curriculum evaluation to identify gaps in representation, social justice, and anti-racism, because many of our materials do not always represent as it should. And I also want to state again, another wonderful announcement that we are creating a new Department of Indian Education right now. That was a subcommittee or a sub-department with a coordinator, and Ms. Nancy Davis will now be a director. And it mirrors more like what we have the state, a multicultural and language department and an Indian education division. We're doing the same here in the district, but I think it's a long time coming to elevate that to a director and a department. So Nancy will be heading that, and we're very excited about it. Again, we're utilizing existing resources. People are taking on more duties to be able to do this within the existing budget. Let's look at the next slide. The multicultural and language department, it recognizes it's important to, and all of us, to respect culture and to help English language learners. Languages reflect our values, right? It also builds solidarity. It means that by which culture and its traditions are shared. Language is shaped by culture. Language and culture are intertwined, and we recognize that. And we welcome students to communicate in their native languages while learning the English language. I am going to take a moment of personal privilege to just to take a moment to recognize that we lost someone really great today, and that is particularly in Chicano literature, and that is Rodolfo Anaya, who passed away today. But when we think of all the children's books and all the stories that he wrote that help validate the culture of New Mexico, and for students to see themselves in the literature, and for children who aren't Chicano to have learned about our customs and culture and food, and to have a better understanding. But for children to be fully successful, they have to feel fully accepted as who they are in our society and in our schools. And so a thank you to Rodolfo Anaya for the gifts that will continue to give children to future generations, and for the pride in our culture and language that he brought to so many New Mexicans in the world. He will be missed. Let me go on to the next slide. Maintaining Spanish and native language. We will continue with 45 to 60 minutes of daily Spanish and language arts, and 45 to 60 minutes of English language development. So you can read the pieces here about learning about your native country's history and discovering ways to share your culture. As we look at the Black Lives Matter movement, it is brought to bear that it is very important that we address these issues, which at one time were front and center, and then as the curriculum was narrowed. But the real point of all of these slides, and I think Ms. Sink said that well, and Dr. Ryan also, is that we're still Santa Fe Public Schools, whether we're remote or we're in a hybrid or we're full reentry. These things that we hold true, that we think are important, will continue to be important. What happened last spring was by design. We had to turn a system over completely. We were not ready to do that, and we followed the guidelines. But again, if people are in a remote learning setting, it will look very different than it did. And we keep saying that, but it's important for people to hear that. Let's go to the next slide. Ms. Sink.
Yes, as you know, one of our priorities is supporting students' well-being, and that's through social emotional learning, or SEL, which is embedded in our daily instruction. I think you saw that. We support classrooms by focusing on relationships. We'll be doing daily check-ins and wellness assessments. We'll have SEL trauma-informed classroom strategies for teachers, and we do PD with teachers and training on this throughout the year. We also will continue our school wellness teams weekly in the schools. Those are the kind of things that we could fit in on a Wednesday, I hope. Still have work on that to do. And we utilize an array of community partners who align their work to support district social emotional goals. None of that will change. And in fact, we'll still work with our community schools model, implemented in 12 of our schools. 2 of them are the PED Community Schools program, and 10 of them are the Communities in Schools for the district program. You can go to the next slide. The next slide is really strengthening the adult SEL competencies. So we provide professional development for the adult as well. SEL professional learning communities. We have professional development for self-care, for SEL learning, What does that mean? Social competence. And by the way, for SEL learning, we've actually bought our own curriculum for that for the different grades. We have professional development in social competence, in trauma and behavioral consultation. For families, we have opportunities for engagement. We'll still try to do that as much as possible in an online environment. And we will have family wellness workshops, and they will continue as well.
Okay, next slide. So health and wellness. I mean, this is, I think, an area that people are very concerned about. And of course, start right off with immunizations, compliance with state law and preventative measures for students. Our lead nurse will be working with nurses and nurses' aides throughout the district. Surveillance and rapid response testing for staff. So this is not when we're talking about measuring people's temperature. We are going to be required by the Department of Health to do surveillance testing. We have not gotten all the guidelines for that, but that will be throughout the weeks ahead for those that are in a face-to-face environment. The social and safe distancing of the 6 feet, mandatory face coverings. We had been told that shields could be used. Shields can be used in addition to a mask, but everyone has to wear a mask. Prevention practices, again, scheduled hand washing, COVID education, there'll be signage. Cohort scheduling is really intended to prevent more spread. We also will be minimizing the number of adults that will be around kids. So for the face-to-face, volunteers will have to be virtual. We really are limiting how much children move around and how many adults come in contact with them. And the reason for the cohorts, it's also easier to contain spread should someone be exposed to a virus. Let's go to the next slide. Again, as we look at this, working with our lead nurse and with the head of the wellness department, we will be reconfiguring all our health offices to have a healthy area and a sick area, so to speak, to keep it very simple. Ventilation considerations, how these visits are scheduled, portable first aid stations, how we isolate students and notify parents, and then for the nursing staff having medical grade personal protective equipment. And I have to tell you that there is so much more to this. We could have kept you here for hours going over all the details in the technical manual for the staff. There are so many more detailed protocols. This is just to give you an overview. Let's see here. We want to have the nursing staff practice standards and precautions. There will be a lot of training in terms of isolating students immediately, contacting families, how we notify people, how we close off an area. For example, if there was someone potentially appeared to be sick and was in a classroom, that area has to be closed off and not even touched for 24 hours and then cleaned and disinfected. I mean, we've gotten so many directives on how to keep people healthy and safe in following DOH and CDC guidelines. We also have an obligation to communicate with staff and families immediately about any COVID-19 cases that are confirmed while maintaining the confidentiality of the person infected. Next slide. At this point, Gabe Romero, are you prepared to go over these slides, or would you like me to do it, or are you on?
Whatever your preference is, Dr. Garcia.
Why don't you go ahead and go over these
Hello,
slides?
this is Lorraine Price.
Go ahead, Vice President Price.
I hope the state comes in to help enforce putting face masks or having children not touch each other in kindergarten. That's it.
All right, thank you. Mr. Romero, please.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia, President Noble, board members. As Dr. Garcia explained previously, what we did is we put together some examples of some of the strategies and protocols we'll be using to prevent the spread of COVID-19. As you see on the first bullet, they have to follow PED and CDC guidelines. So we have a long list of protocols and strategies we're using for this, but I'm providing you a few tonight so you'll get a flavor of really what the task entails. Beyond normal PPE, we also are installing screen protectors at front entranceways. We're going to do that in front of teachers' desks, between sinks in bathrooms. So even that itself is across the district is quite a bit. Also, we're talking about markings and 6-foot distancing points and those types of things. So next slide. The capacities is really important. So what we're doing is first we did some calculations based on square footage. We have square footage of every classroom across the district and did some calculations, and now we're going to those rooms and setting them up to see what the numbers really look like as we set up those classrooms and what other areas we'll need to take advantage of so that we can have the capacity needed to move forward with these different schedules. Food distribution is a big part of this too. We have distance learners and some may not elect to come back to school. So we'll want to make sure that we continue to provide meals to distance learners, as well as students inside the building. And we'll talk about how we'll do that. One interesting thing that came on a little bit earlier was that the circulation of air in buildings across the district is very important. And we're developing strategies with our vendors and contractors to make sure that we flush the building during the time that the schools are in session, and then after or before and after the students come to school, which will bring in more fresh outside air and push that through the school a lot more frequently. It's a little bit less efficient in regards to using your energy resources, but it is important. So we're already making plans to do that. Next slide, please.
I think he had already advanced it. I think 30. Did you already talk? I don't think you talked about 30. Can we go back and look at 30? Yes, we did. Never mind. I'm sorry, Mr. Romero.
We also have to have practices for our staff too, and some of that involves staggering shifts for when they come in, so we don't have congregating employees and they go straight to work. They go to their assignments and head straight to work, and also teaching a lot of training with improved hygiene, especially when you're talking with maintenance, custodial workers. Student nutrition workers are really good about it, but maintenance and custodial workers need to get into habits about washing and cleaning and changing gloves more often. Some of the basic procedures that you'll see with the state and CDC guidance talks about, disinfecting high-touch surfaces very frequently. We've hired additional staff, like 47 additional custodial staff, just to take that on so we can be more efficient and more effective work before and after schools, on weekends, in the evenings, to make sure that we disinfect every classroom. Next slide, please. So here are some examples of how student nutrition will be taking action to prevent the spread of COVID-19, and the changing and sanitizing of utensils, of course, is very, very important. Something that was surprising that came out was, sanitizing those ID cards. If you think about how often those are touched every day, especially when they go through the classroom. So making sure those are clean and pulling food behind the line to make sure that not everybody's touching the food that you're serving. So we'll be serving that food to the students. We do also have the ability to be able to serve in cafeterias, and but we'll have to set those up appropriately so we maintain social distancing. Go ahead, please. And this is where I was talking about with the cafeterias being set up appropriately. And one of the other options, we'll provide several options, whether they want to sit in the cafeteria, take their food somewhere else to eat, possibly straight back to the classroom and eat back in the classroom where there's appropriate social distancing. So we'll provide a variety of options to feed our students. Go ahead. Transportation, of course, is a key component, getting some of our students to school to take the bus. And that's changed very dramatically. So cleaning and disinfecting commonly touched surfaces, of course, is pretty standard and very important to maintain that, but we also have to maintain social distancing on the buses. There's a couple of scenarios in which they'll allow us to put up to 2 students per seat on a bus, but we initially are planning on 1 student per seat in the bus, and those might even be staggered themselves. So we'll work out some schedules to make sure that we're able to transport our students to school, sometimes even if it requires additional bus routes. See,
I do want to add to that we are looking at paying parents, if parents are eligible for transportation, doing that a reimbursement, which would then lower the load, right? Make it easier to social distance on the buses.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. And I did forget to mention that students and drivers will be required to wear PPE on the bus, students in the form of a face mask. So that'll be a requirement, and we'll have extra face masks on the bus if students show up without a face mask, so we don't have any delays. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Romero. And our commitment is to, communicate as best we can with parents using a variety of modalities. Anticipated changes in reentry district-wide, we will communicate as soon as we're aware of it. We intend to, look at virtual town halls, virtual drop-in chats with the superintendent. We are going to establish a hotline. We will place FAQs on the website, but I need to remind everybody that we're going to have to move very, very quickly in being able to analyze the results from the surveys, the qualitative data that came in from the surveys, and talk to people to answer questions. But we do have a limited time because that plan is due on July 15th. And with that, Madam President and members of the board, we are ready to stand for questions.
Thank you very much. Hope everybody got all of that. Lots of good information and detail in there. Questions, comments from the board? Dr. Gonzalez. You're muted.
You need to be muted so that you don't make noise when people are talking and then you forget.
And then you forget.
Madam President, Dr. Garcia, and members of the board. On slide 7, where you were talking about the schedule and that you're going to have students in classroom and students at home, is the teacher going to be operating both the in-person and the distant student?
Yes, Madam President, and that was what Ms. Sink was talking about in terms of the lessons that they're developing and the schedule. And Ms. Sink, would you like to go over that one more time on how the hybrid will work and how you've developed the lessons and the schedule for the day?
Yes, Dr. Garcia, President Noble, board member Dr. Gonzalez. In that hybrid model again, and we can't see it right now, but I think you can remember in the first day, let's say Monday is group A, and they're face-to-face with those students. And this would, so you can see it here. that on Monday, you're face-to-face, let's say at that 8:30 time, if you can see that, that they're doing a mini lesson. And in that mini lesson, they could have that lesson. Let's say it's a story up on the smartboard, for instance. And when I went in classrooms today, in today's classroom, teachers use their smartboards all the time. I saw that as much in elementary as I ever did in high school. And so they have this lesson or the story, something going on in the smartboard. What'll happen is they'll hook their computer up to the smartboard, and the kids that are at home, the kids that are the B kids, if you will, at home, they're watching in this class. So there's probably, if there's a class of 20 in elementary, 10 of them might be at home. Maybe there's even more at home, maybe 12 at home. And they're watching this on the smartboard through their computer. And the teacher is talking to them as if you can remember when you're in elementary or been in an elementary lately, that they're in circles and maybe in semicircles. Well, the same kind of idea is that the teacher is still talking to them as if they're right in front of her, talking about this story about the elephant or whatnot. Then they'll take a break. So the kids are all going to take a break, whether they're at home or they're in the classroom, come back and do a read aloud. Now, again, this is an example of the reading time. So they'll do a read aloud, working on a phonics lesson. The same idea can happen. Now, there's other ideas that teachers even did in the spring. One of them was that for the kids that would not be face-to-face, and in the case last spring, all of them were not face-to-face, so they did videos. So for example, the day before, as part of their lesson planning, they would design a video of themselves going in front of the kids, even though they really weren't there. It was a video of them. Good and bad to that, because kids then have a hard time asking questions on some of that, but it's an idea. Another idea that I've actually seen work in schools in my past are what are called swivels, where a computer is hooked to an iPad and literally swivels and goes along with the teacher as she teaches. As you notice in this lesson, at 10:30, that's when we'll go into small group instruction, even in the classroom face-to-face and independent. And then the kids at home are working on online materials that they provide them. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I just think that classroom management is going to take on a whole new, it's going to go to a whole new level.
I think that's why Dr. Garcia would like to see if there's any way we can have half the kids, in school and half out kind of idea. That would be a great scenario if we can do that. We're waiting to see how it's going to look as far as numbers that are wanting to come back to school, frankly. We can't hear you, Dr. Garcia.
But thank you for that explanation. There's going to be some training needed for teachers for sure.
And that you can imagine what we're working on all summer. And as I said, those first 4 weeks, our plan is that they're training every day for those first 4 weeks. Yeah. And no matter what we do, Dr. Gonzalez and board members, no matter what model we're in, if we go full online, we're going to have that same schedule.
Yeah.
Because it's really what we did during the day anyway, face to face. We don't want to lose time. And in fact, I was talking to a few people about why can't we just do a lesson and then redo the lesson for the B students the next day. The reason for that is that you lose time, and we'll then lose half that content in that year, which we can't afford to do that anymore.
Right. Thank you.
And what I want to say is that AB is not ideal, but it is a model that is being used nationally and that the PED picked. However, if we can figure out a way to maximize space or to be able to use additional spaces and parents can find comfort in coming back to school, I would like to be able to have as many kids in a face-to-face as possible and remote for those parents that really can be at home, right? That don't have job issues and whatnot, and support them. And so, where it could be a win-win for staff and families, that would be my ideal. But, a lot depends on those surveys and our capacity in our schools to be able to house kids. And a hybrid could look like part in school, part at home of the students, not their day. So we'll see. We'll learn a lot in the next few days to get information, and then of course input as we talk to our teachers and our principals and our families beyond the surveys.
Okay, other questions from the board? Board Member Bose, you have comments, I believe.
Thank you, Board President Noble, Dr. Garcia, members of the board. I had a little bit of writing that I did about returning to school before I had seen the presentation, so apologies if there's some redundancy there. This pandemic has launched all of us into uncertainty, though that uncertainty looks different for different people. It is human nature to struggle with uncertainty and react with fear and panic, but it is also something that I am familiar with, as I've been an oncology nurse for the last 13.5 years. I'm familiar with the stages of grief that come when life changes in an instant in unanticipated ways. I'm also familiar with the tenacity and the courage and the willingness to adapt and survive that lies within all of us. We are still in those stages of grief for the normalcy that is gone, the safety and security that is gone, the companionship and socializing and sharing community that is done mostly online and in virtual ways now. I want to acknowledge those feelings and that hardship. And in the spirit of that, I hope we can all continue to extend grace and patience and kindness to each other, because it is so very needed. I think by now we understand the current situation requires multiple situations. As has always been the case in education, there is no one-size-fits-all answer for students, families, and staff. I've been constantly reminded that we started 2020 with the goal of reimagining education in Santa Fe. Coronavirus has dictated that happen in ways much different than we envisioned and on a much different timeline than we had planned. SFPS leadership and staff have risen to that challenge in incredible ways that should give all of us hope. As someone who was elected by the people to sit on this board, I spend a large amount of time thinking about our community. I've been listening and reading emails from teachers and parents, social media discussions, messages from community leaders and activists. Even with all of that listening and reading, I recognize that there are opinions and the needs of the community that I am not aware of. I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I do want to state explicitly that I care. I hope that all families listening tonight will remember to submit their surveys and remind their friends and neighbors to do so also. I anticipate there will be additional ways to engage and provide feedback, and I look forward to every stakeholder having an opportunity to share their opinions and concerns. I'm more certain than ever that there is no one-size-fits-all approach that will work in this situation. Even with multiple options and choices, I think we will be hard-pressed to please everyone, but it won't be for lack of trying. We are all more aware than ever of the critical role that schools play in our society. We are tasked with the crucial job of how to do the most good for the most people. We must prioritize safety for students, families, and staff. We must remember our dedication to equity. We must be brave and innovative. We can do hard things. We've done hard things already this year. So many hard things. Let us continue forging a new path forward together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really rather excellent. Dr. Garcia applauded. Yeah, okay. Secretary Garcia, can you unmute and speak? There you are. Go ahead.
Okay. Oh, good. Now, I'd just like to echo what my fellow board member said. It's just very well stated there, Sarah. This is just a new way of life. And, if there was one perfect way we could all do it, I'm sure we would do it, because we're going to have a lot of opinions out there. I think the presentation that Dr. Garcia did and her staff, excellent presentation. I think we're on it. You guys are on it, obviously. And it's just a new way of life, and we got to figure it out. There's no silver bullet that anybody has. If they did, please show us where it's at. And once again, it's a great presentation, and we just have to figure out what we're going to do. Obviously, the first thing on the agenda is, as you all know, that we all care about, Dr. Garcia and staff, is the safety for our kids and the education for our kids. Top two things. And I believe in our staff. And the great example was whenever the community voted for our IT bond in the past, and we proved to them that we actually did put our money where our mouth was, and that actually included 96% of the kids out there having internet access. Just on that note, if we can actually look at making sure everybody does have proper signal, because I know we did purchase some T-Mobile hotspots in the La Cienega area. T-Mobile didn't really get too well in that valley area. So we had a little bit of challenges, some teachers out in that area, but if we could just look at that. But other than that, great presentation. And I think we're looking forward to the safety and the education of our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Garcia. And I think a lot of important things have been said. I also want to say thank you for the presentation. It's June 30th. It's the last day of the fiscal year, and every previous year that I've been on this board, we take July off. And I know Dr. Garcia and many of the team are not going to be taking time off this July because there's just too much to do. And I want to say thank you to all of you for working so hard. All of the detail and complexity, I think, just about came through in the presentation. And I know that that's in essence a distilled version of what has been going on. And it's occurred to me as I've been reading about this, and obviously school districts around the country are grappling with this, that and it's sort of exactly what Sarah said. We did start the year thinking about reimagining our school district, and we had no idea it would be accelerated in the way that it has been since March. And there was an op-ed in the New York Times recently that said something about there not being a lot of energy behind sort of reinventing and reimagining school. And I just want to say that in this district, there is energy to do that. And that presentation really showed it. And it is such a wonderful thing to be a part of that. It's occurred to me we should, almost wipe the slate clean and start again designing school with what we know are the conditions that we have to operate within. And you all are doing that, and you're doing that with the lens of what the PED guidance is. And I appreciate I cannot think of an area that you didn't cover. I appreciate the emphasis on equity as we do this, that we continue to look at the digital divide, at Spanish language and education for our Native American students, and that we are bringing in the social movement, what we're learning from the Black Lives Matters movement. And then the emphasis on professional development and teachers practicing and recognizing that our everyone who is working in the system needs support to evolve and adapt. And there is so much going on right now. It is really difficult to get our collective heads around. And so I would say, Dr. Garcia, to you and your team, thank you for being patient with the rest of us and with the community. And this is a lot to communicate and for family members and students to digest. I will pledge, I think, on behalf of all of my fellow board members, that we will do our best to help with that, to get the message out, to actively communicate. I really appreciate to everyone in the community, staff members and families and students who reached out through public forum, who have reached out to us individually as board members with ideas. This is really what it takes. And, I don't think I can say it better than board member Bose, in that we all have to have grace and patience and kindness for each other as we move through this, because it's really hard, and it is probably a grieving process as we leave behind the model we knew before, and not just in school, in everything. But this is foundational, as Secretary Garcia said, safety, education, these are really foundational things to our society. So as we continue to push forward and remake our society and our habits in the COVID positive world, it's great to see that education is such a priority in this community, in this district, in this board, and in sort of the larger collective team that we all are for the Santa Fe Public Schools. So thank you. I'm going to go through the presentation again and digest more. And I'm sure we will continue to have these conversations and updates. And I hope that we maintain grace and kindness and stay flexible. And, what you've demonstrated is already extraordinarily innovative and flexible. And it is way more than I had even hoped for what we'd be thinking about at this stage already. So thank you. Vice President Price, we've all said a few words. Do you want to say anything? There you are. You're unmuted. It looks like. Oh, there you are.
Okay, you got me?
Yep.
Okay. No, I have nothing more to add.
Okay. Thank you. Ready to move on? Dr. Garcia, anything you want to say to wrap up this item?
I just want to thank the board for your attention and really capturing, what we're trying to do and accomplish. And I just want to thank the team at the cabinet level and the directors. This has really been a team effort to get this done, and as quickly as we've been working on this. But like as you said, there's so much more to this than what is even evident here. And the commitment that people have for this district is inspiring. I think it inspires all of us to work harder and to reach the highest level of excellence that we can on behalf of the community we serve. And thank you for your leadership and the great words that were shared here tonight. And grace and kindness and flexibility. We need more of that, right? So thank you so much for everything that you've all have said tonight. Greatly appreciated.
Okay, well, to be continued, of course. Moving on to item 9, our action items. We have the consent agenda to begin with. And I had one brief question about that, which is the item that is $1.1 million for, I think it's something like augmenting staff in technology. It was the first in our grid of that. Just wondering if Dr. Garcia or Dr. Ryan might say a little bit more about that item.
Dr. Ryan, you probably have more detail than I do. I don't have it in front of me at the moment. Can you talk to that item? Or have I? It's actually Dr. Ryan, you and Patricia Nordby. It's from the ETN. Okay, I don't think Dr. Ryan can hear me. What that is from the educational technology note, and it's just probably a refresh. I can't read it. It says district-wide to provide staff augmentation services. And I don't. Neil Weaver, are you on what you mean by staff?
Just unmute so I can answer the question.
Thank you.
Yes, we have contracted with IT Connect to help provide personnel to repair computers. At the time they even did some of our DLCs. So these are the folks that take care of security. And so by staff augmentation, it means that we contract with them to provide staff to take care of technical support of our devices.
Got it. Thank you very much. We're not quite hiring robots yet. Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the consent agenda? And if not, may I have a motion?
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez for the motion, Vice President Price for the second. We will take a roll call vote. Vice President Price?
Yes.
Secretary Garcia? You're unmuted now. Secretary Garcia, your vote on the consent agenda? Oh boy, I don't know if we can't hear him or what.
I'm good with it. Yes.
Okay.
I don't know what, okay.
Thank you. Dr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Board Member Bozay?
Yes.
And the president votes yes. Thank you very much. Moving on to action item B, adoption of the superintendent's evaluation for 2019-2020. And just to provide a little bit of context, it was, I think, 2 weeks ago. The week of, I don't remember whether it was the 18th. It was June 18th that we met in executive session to do the superintendent's evaluation. I believe it was a 4.5-hour session. And we went through a lot of different areas in great detail and heard some context from Dr. Garcia. It has been an extraordinary year. Some of the highlights include the COVID response, as well as our first mail-in election for the ETN, which we are extremely grateful to the voters of Santa Fe for approving. And it was a very different way to do things. We have also continued to pursue equity, faced budget cuts in this year's budget, and really Dr. Garcia has been an exemplary superintendent through it all. So we will be adopting formally, I believe, the evaluation that we worked on so hard last week. And with that, I guess I would move for approval to adopt the superintendent's evaluation for 2019-2020.
This is Sarah. I will second that.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Okay.
This is Lorraine.
Go ahead, Vice President Price.
We normally don't talk about anybody's evaluation, so I guess the superintendent didn't mind that, but evaluations are supposed to be, what should I say, personal.
Yes, thank you. I did realize I was veering into that as I was providing some context. Thank you for the reminder. Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Vice President Price?
Yes.
Secretary Garcia?
Yes.
Dr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Board Member Bozay?
Yes.
And the president votes yes. Okay, moving on to action item C, the superintendent's contract amendment and extension. And again, this was worked on last week, and we will now be formally adopting what was established there. May I have a motion? Dr. Gonzalez.
Yes. I move that the Santa Fe Public Schools offer Dr. Veronica C. Garcia a contract as superintendent of Santa Fe Public Schools from July 1, 2020 until June 30th, 2023, consistent with the contract offer and terms and conditions that will be attached to the minutes of this meeting.
And is there a second?
This is Sarah. I second that.
Thank you.
I'll third that. This is Ruby. I'll third that.
Thank you for the second and the third. Okay, we will do a roll call vote on the superintendent's contract, which is an extension for 2 years, as Dr. Gonzalez outlined, taking us through to June 30th of 2023. Let's start with Board Member Bozay this time.
Yes.
Secretary Garcia?
Yes.
Dr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Vice President Price?
Yes.
And the president votes yes. And Dr. Garcia, thank you very much for your service and for agreeing to be with us for these next 3 years.
Thank you very much. The Santa Fe Public Schools feels like my home and my family, and I'm very committed to this district. And it's a real honor to serve as your superintendent. Thank you for your faith and belief in me. And I will continue to give it my very best. And I thank the team and everyone that works with me and our employees. It takes all of us to have a successful school district, and I'm very, very grateful. Thank you.
Good stuff.
Madam President, I need to step away from the meeting for a bit. That's okay with you?
Okay. Do you have any committee appointments? That's our next action item.
At this time, I don't.
Okay. Thank you, Secretary Garcia.
Thank you.
Do any other board members have any committee appointments to put forward at this time for the Audit Committee or the Citizens Review Committee?
This is Carmen, and I do have for the Audit Committee.
Okay.
So I have Margot Shirley. She was on it before and she'll continue.
Great. Any other nominations for the audit committee? I don't remember who's done one. Okay, do you want to make a motion that we appoint Margot Shirley to the audit committee for this next year?
Sure. I move that we appoint Margot Shirley to the audit committee for the coming year.
Okay, I will second that. We'll do a roll call vote. Vice President Price?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I will abstain.
Okay. Board Member Bozay?
Yes.
Dr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
And the president votes yes. Are there any appointments for the Citizens Review Committee? Okay, hearing none, we'll continue to have this on the agenda, and I will check in with Alma just to make sure we know who's got what and maybe do a reminder on those appointments.
Madam President, you can see it, right? We can see exactly who we need to get appointed for.
And Madam President, my audit committee members should be there because that was all set at the last meeting. I'm sorry, my CRC members stayed the same.
Yeah,
so,
I think that's right. We did
but they're not filled in there on that sheet.
I'll make sure that gets followed up on, Madam President and Board Member Bozay.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam President, this is not, sorry to interrupt. This is Rudy, but I keep my same two also. I'll keep Philip Montano as well as Lisa.
Okay. Do you want to go ahead and make a motion then that we reappoint them?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we reappoint Lisa Rendell, I believe that's how you pronounce her name, and Philip Montano to the CDRC, Citizens Review Committee.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we'll go ahead and take a roll call vote. Vice President Price?
Yes.
Dr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Board Member Bozay?
Yes.
Secretary Garcia?
Yes.
And the president votes yes. All right, so we are still looking for a couple audit committee members from Secretary Garcia, Vice President Price, as well as one more CRC member from Vice President Price. I think that's right. And then the union representative, we don't appoint. That's appointed by the unions, correct, Dr. Garcia?
That is correct, Madam President.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item 10, board discussion and possible action, virtual town halls on return to school. Dr. Gonzalez.
Okay, thank you, Madam President, Dr. Garcia, and members of the board. I have a parent, one of my constituents, Lachey Hesh, who is a parent at Seque Madre. And we met before the pandemic about the equity issues and all of that. And then we didn't meet again. She contacted me a couple of weeks ago about concerns that the parents are having that she's talked with at Seque Madre and other schools. And, you know, she sent me some questions. I think a lot of them were answered today in the presentation. But, you know, they're concerned about teachers leaving because they'll find jobs that are safer. I'm not sure that's the case, but basically what she really wants to do is to have a virtual town hall with our schools and let the parents in the community air their concerns and hear an update. So we talked with Dr. Garcia this morning. I don't know when it was. Sometimes
this morning.
This morning. And Dr. Garcia really liked the idea and was even thinking about perhaps having Fleshay interview her and ask her questions that are of concerns to parents. And then we thought about perhaps having a middle school parent and a high school parent the same. And also just having a virtual town hall. And I'm not sure whether it would be probably more beneficial after the 15th, after the report is done, just to inform the our parents in our community. I know that there's, we have a lot out there on social media, and we get the robocalls and we have all of that, but there's still something that's not there, that's missing. And I think that that's what they're feeling, is that they really need more contact. I mean, before the pandemic, I would have met with parents, I would have met with individuals, but since this all happened, we haven't been able to do that. So I just brought it to you all and see what you think. Putting it out there.
Comments, questions?
Do you want to respond? Do you want to say anything, Dr. Garcia, about our conversation this morning?
Sure.
Madam President, Madam President.
Go ahead, Secretary Garcia.
Hi, I think this is an excellent idea that we actually do go to several schools, or do as what would Dr. Gonzalez was just mentioning. I just want to some of the chats that are going around, like kind of, I just don't want to open up Dr. Garcia to
right
a huge sting thing, but she'll figure it out. But those are the comments I have. Thank you. A great idea.
Go ahead, Dr. Garcia.
We had a great conversation, Flachet, Hesh had some wonderful ideas, from me just being on video and just talking to people about, how we're approaching this. She felt good after we talked, and she said, I wish you could just talk that way to our parents so they could hear from you how you're approaching it. So we've talked about doing that. We talked about perhaps, and I think Ms. Noble, you may have talked to me about this, I think, or maybe it was Dr. Gonzalez, like I can't even, like you, Dr. Gonzalez, was it this morning or yesterday? So much happens in one day, right? But could we do district virtual, by board district virtual town halls, so that, Ms. Bozay could be, maybe it won't necessarily be me, it might be a member of my staff, or I may be in part of them, but can we have, offer a couple of town halls per board district where we could engage smaller groups of people, but we're going to have to do it fairly soon. I do think that we need to engage people before the plan is submitted, just to hear from people. We might hear something that we haven't thought of, but also to hear from people about their concerns. As I said when I started, the saying, you can't please everybody all the time, but we really want to try if we can. And so I'm open to doing that. I'm also open to doing it later. We also have commitment to do that with our internal stakeholders. So if the board will allow us to work with you and figure out a structure, we can make this happen. It will have to involve, I can't spread myself that thin. I would love to be at everybody's town hall and virtual town hall meeting, but we'll have myself or members of senior staff be with board members in their district town halls. We can also have some large ones and collect information. But I think for people to, they can watch this presentation. I can do a short video, but then just to listen. I think sometimes, us not talking so much or answering questions. Another idea that came up was that Dr. Ms. Flachet, that's her first name, Hesh, would try to recruit, a middle school, a middle school, high school parent. We thought maybe a parent of a child with disabilities, maybe English language learner. We probably should do some in Spanish with our immigrant community as well. but to have this sort of panel of parents asking myself and the senior leadership questions that we could then post also as a video so people could watch that. So just trying to do a variety of things. This time, Friday is, the district is closed. So, you know, that tomorrow is, yeah, Wednesday.
You're coming in and out.
I'm sorry. I'm just saying we're running out of time to be able to do everything we want to do. But, you know, we do have to submit a plan. It is subject to change. And I think that we can continue to meet with our constituents, right, and listen to them. So we're open to doing whatever is the pleasure of the board. And it is on for possible action. So I think it's just a matter of one of you making a motion. But if you would like to, I would recommend that you make a motion that you direct me to come up with a way to interact with your constituents by district, as well as some at-large meetings. And then we'll work on a schedule and get you scheduled to talk to people and listen. I think the listening part's the most important.
I'll go ahead and make that motion. Madam President, is that okay? Or do you want to?
Yes, why don't you make a motion and I will second, and we can have any further discussion that we need.
Okay, so I move that we turn this to Dr. Garcia to come up with some plans for how we would have these meetings. And I am more than happy to help you with that. And I know that Fleshay is.
Sorry to interrupt. Is Ms. Price okay?
Yes, Vice President Price, are you all right?
Does anybody know where she lives so we can call for some assistance for her?
Mario, can you do a well check, please? Or have somebody out?
I'll get her.
Ms. Price,
Hello?
Ms.
I'll
Price,
get
if
up.
you need some help, we can get you some help. Let me know
Can
where
you
you're
hear
at.
me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I fell. I'll be okay.
Ms. Price, are you sure? Because we can get somebody out there to make sure you're okay.
No, I'll be okay. I'll get up.
I'm not I'm not totally confident. I believe in you, but I really would like to have somebody go out there and make sure you're okay. I just don't know
No,
where
I'm
you
okay.
live.
I'm okay. I just got tangled in my feet.
Okay. I'm gonna take your word for it, but I'm gonna watch you, make sure you're okay. I'm gonna ask you a few questions maybe later on.
We'll be calling you, Ms. Price, after the meeting, okay?
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, Dr. Gonzalez, maybe you should start the motion again.
Okay. I move that that Dr. Garcia look into how we can start these community conversations online with with the different districts. I don't know what I said before, but.
And I will second for the purposes of discussion. And the one question I have is just, is it important to do it district by district? Just because in the virtual world, it's so much easier. And honestly, I guess I'd rather have 2 or 3 well-attended, good ones with rich discussion. And I wonder if just 5 is too many. So I just wanted to pose that.
I agree with that. I think that having 2 or 3 with, several board members talk, there along with the leadership would be better. I think probably my district, and especially with Fleshay's help, I'd probably be able to get quite a few people, but I don't know about every other district. And I'm not quite sure how we'll do it in Spanish.
Madam
Dr. Garcia?
President, yeah, and members of the board, my only concern about once you start getting more than 2 board members there, then I have to schedule it as a special meeting, then I have to announce it. So it just gets a little more complex. Now, we can do, you know, have you be present, but not, and just attending like we do, but not necessarily, now you're not going to take any action. Josh, are you on? Josh, Mr. Granada, our general counsel? What's your advice? I can see that you're on. What's your advice on that? Would we be okay to have these town halls and they're not, since we're not taking any action? I don't have to worry about a quorum?
Dr. Garcia, I think the safest route would be to notice the meeting as a special meeting. That would be the route proper, according to OMA, in my opinion, which would require 3 days notice prior to the meeting. That's only if there's a quorum, though.
So that was my only concern, is it adds a level of complexity, but we could combine 2 districts at a time and have, you know, less. We could do that as well.
Well,
So
that was what I was going to say, is we could just have 2 of us, you know, and
Right. So we could do 2, we could do 2 of you in one, 2 in another. And then I would say for Mr. Garcia, have 1 just regular and then an at-large in Spanish speaking, which can anybody, and quite frankly, because it's virtual, anyone can attend. But if people want to talk to their board member and specifically, they might want to go to the ones that you're at, right? So we could do that with 3. That would actually would be helpful for us in terms of, we also have to listen to our internal stakeholders. So we'll need to get on that schedule as soon as possible so that we can notice the meetings, okay? And get that done. So we'll work with Alma and I'll work with you on your schedules.
the other thing I was going to say is that, and, you know, I think this was Dr. Gonzalez's instinct to begin with, was even after July 15th, and given that it's subject to change and it really does feel as if this is going to continue to evolve, I think, you know, that would be fine in terms
that would actually be really helpful, because I do believe that I mean, you're all listening to your constituents, and so I have to take your guidance there. We will do whatever you feel we need to accommodate you, but the reality is that we are going to have to keep refining, and we're also going to have to look at each school population and how those surveys came out and what the space is. I mean, we may have the most grandiose plans that we want to bring all the K and 3rd graders in and do something else, and we may not have the space to do it in a certain school, right? So we may be limited until so again, we go back to surveys, and capacity is going to be a big driver as well.
Dr. Gonzalez, I just want to be sure I didn't misrepresent anything. You had feelings on the timing or anything like that?
No, right. I did not. And I think it'd be good to have some before everything was due, just to get their input. But I think it's going to be really important afterwards too, to really inform parents. And yes, they can come to a board meeting and hear things, but then they have to hear a bunch of other things. And this would be just a meeting about what we're doing and what, you know, what concerns they have, etc. It'd be more interactive than a board meeting can be.
I totally agree. I think it's nice to do something that is explicitly constituent focused.
I agree.
And we'd be doing that probably if we didn't have this darn pandemic.
Okay, well, Dr. Garcia, I think, you know, it's yours to work with in terms of this discussion and even the motion to figure out how we can do this in the most expeditious and efficient way.
So we'll work on that, and then I'll get with the board president, and then I will work with you all.
Okay.
So
Well, we've
that
had a
will be- that will
motion
be
and
a priority.
we've had a motion and a second, so we should probably take a roll call vote. Dr. Gonzalez, we'll start with you this time.
Yes.
Board Member Bozay,
Yes.
Secretary Garcia,
Yes.
Vice President Price.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. No.
Okay. And the president votes yes. Okay. Thank you all. Moving on to advanced planning. Looks like there's a CRC meeting tomorrow. And as we heard in the presentation, we will be scheduling meetings very likely and/or study sessions in July to do our budget adjustments and other business we need to take care of, given that we're in a brave new world.
We'll do our best, Madam President, to give you notice, but of course, this stuff is moving very quickly. And so we'd like to stay with our Tuesdays and Thursdays as we have in the past, but we may need a special meeting just because of timing. But I will work with you, Madam President, on that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anything else on advanced planning?
Yeah, I just have a question. I can't look at the advanced planning. Is the regular meetings are on Tuesdays and Thursdays? Is
That's
what?
correct.
Tuesdays for the board meetings. I think they're first and third, right? And then
Okay. All right. I just want
and fourth, the Thursday, second and fourth for the study sessions.
Okay. Because the second and last Tuesdays of the month are a little difficult for me.
Okay, we'll
And
do our best to avoid that.
And I know today was actually a special meeting, but okay.
So second, and which Tuesdays are when you have your commission meetings?
The second and last Tuesday of the month.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And we had talked about that as a board a while back too, but thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, anything else?
Can somebody help me find my glasses?
Not virtually, that's not easy.
I'm just kidding. I don't have anything else. but good
Probably
meeting.
on your head, though.
Yes, exactly.
That's funny. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We are adjourned and we will likely come back together in July to be determined. Thank you all very much for the great work and congratulations on the end of the fiscal year.
Thank you, everybody.
Before we leave, Ms. Price, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay, we just want to make sure you're all right.
I'm all right.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Price.
Okay.
Bye-bye.